Right, good afternoon to you. Thank you so much for staying with 95.1 at Nigeria Info. It's 4 minutes after 3, and this is where I officially welcome you to day 3 of the Nigeria Info National Roundtable, where we take a look at some of the big stories, the big conversation, the big issues for the first half of 2023. And you agree with me that 2023 has been a year packed. The first half of it has been packed with a lot of activity. I mean, we had the election, we had expectation dashed, and people who were exhilarated and excited about the outcome of it. You know, we had go to court, we had the currency issue that people had to grapple with even before the election. So it's just been a year packed with so much. The first half of it, I'm not surprised though that it feels like 2023 went by really fast because of all of the activities. Day 1 and day 2, we looked at some of the key issues and some of the key stories. And day 3 today, we'll do sort of, share thoughts about the former president of Nigeria, President Muhammad Buhari's administration, his time in office, the whole 8 years, try to in retrospect, look at how he performed and if he delivered on his promises. Would look at the first month of President Bola Ahmed Tinubu in office and the first month of the governors and their performance so far. What policies have they put out? Are they people-friendly? Are they hostile? How are Nigerians embracing and accepting these policies? These issues and more we'll take a look at, as much as we'll look at one burning story that's refusing to go away, and that is the former CBN governor, or he's suspended. So it's still
suspended CBN governor. Yeah.
Godwin Emefiele, and the suspended EFCC chairman also, Abdurrashid Bawa. We'll be talking about the faith where it stands and what is it with EFCC. It feels like every EFCC chairman needs to just leave almost in a hurry. We saw that with his predecessor. We saw that with
what's his name?
I forgot his name already, and it's not been long. He was EFCC chairman. And then even before him, from Farida to all of them, it feels very political that you get people who are told to leave office almost impromptu and shrouded with one controversy around corruption or the other. Well, we're interrogating that and more with my colleagues from Port Harcourt, from Lagos, who will be joining us. But first, let's introduce Abayomi. Abayomi is our senior editor here from the newsroom, and we're delighted to have you, Abayomi.
Yeah, Kimberly, thank you so much. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon. Welcome. So joining us from Port Harcourt, we have Sam Oracle Chinedu from Nigeria Info Port Harcourt, who will be joining us. Sam, let's just know that you can hear me crystal clear. Hello, Sam.
Yes, I believe I can hear you. Can you hear me, Kim?
Yes. Loud and clear, Sam. And also we have Ufuoma Egbamuno is our news manager from Lagos. Hi, Ufuoma. Good afternoon to you.
Hi, Kimberly. Good afternoon.
Thank you so much for joining us. And Kalada. Kalada is the presenter of Hard Facts in Port Harcourt. Good afternoon, Kalada.
Good afternoon, Kim.
Thank you so much. Is it a little too late to say Barika de Salah? We're still here and the roads are still clear. No activity going on. Offices are still shut down. Talking about the government offices. So Salah spirit is still pretty much on. So Barika de Salah to you guys.
Thank you.
Same to you.
Thank you.
All right, thank you very much. So let's start off with the Emefiele Bawa story. And I was talking with someone a few minutes back, and he was still wondering why the former CBN governor did not go on the study leave as planned. But that was speculation. There was no way they put out a formal notice telling Nigerians he was going to go on the study leave. It was speculation that made the round. And quite a number of people bought it, but they came out later to say that it wasn't something that they approved of in the first instance. But he's still been investigated. There's sort of numbers of allegations against him. How he managed the monetary policy is hanging over his head. And just even before that, we had a situation with the DSS in which they alleged that he was funding terrorism, in which they wanted to have him arrested at that point in time. But for some reason, it didn't work. He left the country for a break, vacation or holiday. He came back and that was sort of swept under the carpet, or they said soldiers were around and they couldn't quite pick him up until
the administration of President Buhari ran out or ended, and then it felt like the new president decided, oh, well, it's time for you to step aside and have a lot of issues interrogated. And that's where we're going to start from, and then get into the EFCC saga also. But I want to start with Sam Oracle to get your take on this situation with the CBN governor. First, looking at the monetary policies and perhaps even taking several steps back to looking at other policies that he's introduced that people felt were like, you know, when you're gambling with policies, you're just trying your hands at whatever, then wherever you hit the jackpot, we go with it. From the point with saying, all right, we cannot continue with the cryptocurrency because it was affecting our Naira when Naira was diving, and then you had to call out some people and said it was crypto. They had to do away with that. It seemed to have had several policy somersaults up until the point where we came up with the redesign of the Naira, which was accepted at one point and became quite unpopular when Naira disappeared from circulation almost 98%, and people started getting very restless about it. But let's start with you, Sam Oracle, to saying where he is now, talking about Godwin Emefiele. Are you surprised by all of the development to the point where President Bola Ahmed Tinubu had to have him suspended and thorough investigation carried out by the DSS? Hello, Sam. Okay, I think we can't. Yeah. Okay, Sam, go ahead. We can hear you now.
How you doing? Yeah, so honestly, I didn't hear what you said. There's something in me that just told me that
I was talking about Godwin Emefiele, the former CBN governor, and the policies he introduced up until the point where the president had to have him suspended. Sam, go ahead.
Emefiele, I'm not quite sure what the question is. I just heard you say Emefiele. For the DSS and Emefiele saga, I believe that's what we're talking about.
You're correct, yes.
Well, we all knew he was coming. We knew he was coming because, like a boyfriend, the DSS had expressed its profound love for Emefiele. They had, been after him for quite some time. The court had stopped them, and we knew it was only a matter of time before they would eventually get to him. So it was not shocking when, minutes after the president suspended him, the DSS decided to move in and get him. But looking at the charges against him, financing terrorism and financial sabotage, the first thing that came out of that was Femi Falana stated that it was not in the jurisdiction of the DSS to arrest him, at least for the financial charges. My concern is, and I know that the court had a reason why they had stopped the DSS from arresting Emefiele last year. They claimed that the charges did not have enough evidence. Now, this is my concern. If a person is accused of financing terrorism, whether or not that is true, that is something that is so serious that dismissing it by the evidence is not enough would not work. Let's say whether or not that is true, financing terrorism, that is something that is so serious was in Nigeria. So for me, I don't think it was enough for the courts to come out and say, oh, what you have is not enough, because I guess the DSS were onto something. A minute, an extra day for somebody who is a suspect of financing terrorism is enough to cause a lot of damage. If I have wind that they're coming after me, they are going to arrest me, and the court says, no, don't pick him up, that borrowed time I'm living on will be enough for me to do as much as I need to do. So I think in 2022, December, I believe, when he was first accused by the DSS and were looking to get him, they should have allowed them. A lot of things happened. He went on vacation. It almost seemed at the time that the former President Buhari was solidly behind him. One thing led to another, and we knew that eventually the DSS, when they have their shot, will hold Emefiele. And it eventually happened. He was dropped as the CBN governor, and they did what they promised they were going to do after chasing him for a very long time. So for the economic sabotage, they say that is in the jurisdiction of the EFCC, not the DSS. And I think I agree with the son, Femi Falana, that, the EFCC should handle that. However, I was having a conversation, I can't remember with who. They said if the economic sabotage was a crime against the state, it led to breakdown of law and order in Nigeria, then it still is in the jurisdiction of the DSS. So right now, we just have what the DSS has told us, that he was financing terrorism. We don't have anything beyond that. We don't know how much he gave to who. We don't know which terrorist said, oh yes, I shook hands with Emefiele. We're still waiting for investigation. Apparently the investigation is taking longer than it should. Because now there are conversations around the abuse of his human rights. He shouldn't be held for this long without taking him to court. And this is a problem we have in Nigeria, not just with the DSS, but with people who have the responsibility of detaining. We arrest before we investigate. In other parts of the world, unfortunately, I don't like comparing Nigeria to wherever. Before an arrest is made, there is enough investigation to charge you. You can be taken to court the next day. But here in Nigeria, we will first arrest, then we'll not start investigation. That's when you now hear that the person's house has been raided, that the officers are searching his house to look for whatever. But this is investigation that should have happened. When you now have something solid, you go in and arrest. Emefiele has been detained since, I think, early this month, if I'm not mistaken. Until today, he's still in the custody of the DSS. We're talking about how he's not supposed to spend more than 48 hours. At some point, there was conversation around how he didn't have access to his family and his lawyers. Until today, they are still questioning him. We're still trying to find out what has he done, what hasn't he done. All the information we have about this case is, oh, he did this, he didn't do that. It's all speculative at this point. And the DSS has allowed it to get to this point. So I think maybe they're doing the right thing, but they're not doing it the right way. You know, the approach to it, it leaves a lot to be desired.
A lot to be desired. Sam, you were talking about all of this in not investigating thoroughly. I think it's something that even the EFCC has been accused of over time, to say we're not very thorough. And then you get to court and you lose half the case in court because thorough work has not been put into it. It feels like it's a cultural thing for us here. But then, one would also argue and say they seem to have a file load of issues, allegations against the CBN governor that you think they would have a watertight case to present. And it might not just be grab him immediately and head up to court and start with your case. Perhaps, buying time to solidify all of it. Still guilty of the delay, right? Even with this argument, I suppose. Sam seems to agree. Do you agree with that?
I think I agree with Sam there because over the times in Nigeria, this is not the first, it's not the second, and it will never be the last. With their trials, you are arresting somebody, and it's after arrest that you start looking for evidences. Come on, it's because there's this feeling that government can never be wrong. So even if you try to fight for your, fundamental right, it's always difficult, And even after everything, maybe they could not even get anything against you. The court will just, maybe discharge, you are acquitted, and that's all. But there's nothing, as punishment for, breaching your right in the first place. How do you pick somebody? See, in advanced country, when you are being picked, there's enough evidence to nail you. Just as I said, there's enough. So, but here you are being picked. Even if you have some files in your house that could even be, help the so-called, agency in their investigations. You have time. You can always, mail it to your family that, okay, destroy this. But this is what they ought to have, gotten hold of even before picking you, so that you would not even have the chance, to destroy evidence in the first place. That's just it.
All right, talking about destroying evidences, let's bring in the CBN, the EFCC chairman, the suspended EFCC chairman in at this point in time. As a matter of fact, I hear Nigerians are even still asking the question, what happened to Ibrahim Magu? Because the last time we heard, there was a panel set up to interrogate allegations leveled against him and saying that he was indicted to some extent by the panel, allegations of misappropriation of fund, handedness, abuse of office, and some corrupt practices, in which it was recommended that he be suspended, and he was removed as the FCC chairman before this young, very bubbly, full of life Bawa was brought in, and Nigerians said, okay, let's give him benefit of the doubt. He seemed full of life and energy. He's young, he's vibrant, and I believe that he's going to do something different. Before the allegations also started trickling in, and then came a full-blown flood as to, requiring the president to have him suspended and also investigated. They continue, this also brings, and I'm going to start with Kalada on this, because we have seen one EFCC chairman after the other leave unceremoniously. It just seemed to be the way for EFCC chairman to exit. I mean, if you're looking back to Farida to Nuhu Ribadu, very political. Someone comes in and is not so comfortable what you're doing, and you're booted out. Ibrahim Magu's own was so interesting that Nigerians were hoping to get some level of closure, but what they got was a promotion in the police at the end of the day, and nothing happened. And then we're seeing this young gentleman also facing the same storm at this point in time. And the curious question is it going to play out like several others who perhaps somewhere down the line you would be given a special advisor role on? Maybe, maybe not. But Kalada, let's get your 2 cents on this Bawa's case, Abdul Rashid Bawa's case, and all of that. You think all of the allegations that you've heard leveled against the gentleman, do you think it's pure politics, like some people fear, or there's substance to checking this out? And is there perhaps a way we can deal with all of this unceremonious way in which we just send out the EFCC chairman? Doesn't it take something away from the anti-graft agency?
All right, thank you. Thank you very much. I'd like to start by saying that once someone in office, a public officer, is said to have committed a crime, then it is okay for such persons or people to be investigated. I'd like to take you to Scotland, where the former first minister, was alleged to have used party funds in a way. She went in for it. The police called her. They questioned her, they questioned her husband. And this same thing with the former Prime Minister of the UK, Boris Johnson, the same thing. So when people in public office here in Nigeria are said to have alleged to have committed a crime, in my opinion, it's okay for us to investigate. But like Sam did say when he was talking, a lot of the time we do media trials. A lot of the time we put the cat before the horse, yeah? And so that's why we really have not been able to take the corruption fight to the level that it should be. That being said, when we come to Bawa, when we had the first person as, what's his name now? The current, just skipped my head. When we had him as EFCC chairman at first.
You're talking about Ribadu.
Thank you very much, Ribadu, yeah. When we had him as chairman at first, also the similar issue happened. He was going after, according to reports at the time, he was going after people said to be the untouchables. He was going after them because he had, according to him, some corruption cases against them. We saw Lamode come in. Lamode was also ceremoniously removed from office as well. Magu, the same thing. Was it last year? Magu was saying that corruption was fighting back. That is why he was treated the way he was treated. And now we've seen Bawa, who was his replacement, also go through the same issue. Now, let's go back to towards the end of last year, when there was the cashless policy in place, and there were some of these policies that were rolled out by the government that some politicians thought were against them, that were used to stop them from winning elections. The EFCC chairman, the suspended EFCC chairman at the time, came out and said that these policies were good. So when you want to look at it from the political angle, maybe there are some, credible conversations or arguments or debates when you look at it from a political angle. However, it's my opinion that if he has been alleged to have committed a crime, then they should prove. Remember, the former governor was accusing him of, is it bribe? Asking for...
You're talking about the Zamfara state governor, right? Who said, why investigate me alone when others are there?
Yeah. So, but then again, if we must fight corruption in Nigeria, then we need to really ensure that some of these allegations are trashed out and everybody is made should prove himself or herself.
Talking about proving himself, you talked about fighting corruption. Now, since the EFCC was set up 2002, 2003 or thereabout, We've had them unceremoniously removed, but not one of them have been convicted to the point of going to jail. And you start to ask yourself, what does this even mean? Because if you're all having weighty allegation, corruption-related allegation, abuse of office, and that agency was set up for this singular reason to deal with anti-graft issues, corruption, and corrupt practices, how is it really that we've not been able to have one of them convicted to send a strong message to say we will not condone this?
Well, I guess it's. I was talking with somebody. It's like there's an agreement between successive presidents that each other's administration would not be questioned, as the case may be, because there are some you hear of weighty allegations about a particular former president, and before you know it, the whole thing is swept under the carpet, and you won't see anything again. And it's like, after leaving that office, just go home, go and rest. Whatever you've done, whatever crime you have committed, you are forgiven. Just let it, unlike where, look at Donald Trump today, see what he's facing. But can that ever happen in Nigeria? We hear of allegations that were brought against former President Olusegun Obasanjo. Where is the case today? So these are the things. I guess the same thing is going with EFCC, chairmen as they are leaving. You just see them being sacked, suspended, and you hear panels, being set up to investigate them. But after everything, you will not hear anything again. And before you know it, you start hearing of promotion of, them being, given another appointment, as the case may be. So maybe we need to do more, as a people, start asking, as in following it up. This thing, what do you want to do about this? This thing, why are you not saying anything about it? We are not hearing anything about this case again. Why? What is happening? What is the latest? So maybe by the time we start doing that, we might get better, actually.
We just might. Ufuoma, I would love to get your 2 cents here also before we move on to the next story. And I've heard some Nigerians ask, now, Niger, it's going to be one of those stories. Nothing would happen. From Emefiele to Bawa, it is going to be one of the stories that we talk about and move on to another breaking news or another big story. I don't know what is going to overwhelm this one, but do you quite agree with Nigerians who have become overtly very skeptical about some of these things and so critical to the point where they'll say nothing will happen?
Well, you might not necessarily blame the Nigerian populace to share those sentiments because, like almost everybody has said, since the EFCC was established in 2002 and then became fully operational in 2003, we've had substantive chairpersons unceremoniously booted out, from Nuhu Ribadu, who is now NSC, to Farida Waziri, Ibrahim Lamode, and now Bawa. Sorry, I've been watching so much.
Jack Bawa.
But on a more serious note, I was talking about the fact that all the substantive chairpersons of EFCC, have had one issue leveled against them, and nothing has actually happened. It was the same way that the former CBN governor, I'm talking Sanusi now, was accused. Today, we've not heard anything about it. The funny thing about these two individuals is that both of them are sort of interrelated. Both the suspended CBN chairman and the suspended EFCC chairperson. Their cases look interrelated. I think it was Abayomi who mentioned, that some politicians, let's say it the way it is. It's the current president. He actually accused Emefiele of starting the what's it called now? The
Naira redesign
change policy. Because he did not want him, President Tinubu, to actually win the election. He actually said that publicly. He made that accusation. And we've also heard reports that Emefiele allegedly accusing Bawa in the investigations with the DSS, that it was Bawa who actually, met the former President Buhari and gave him, or initiated the policy. But we've also heard allegedly Bawa saying, no, I was not the one who initiated this. It's you guys that's talking about Emefiele and the former Attorney General Malami, who asked him to raise the memo to the president. So it's a bit of counter accusations here and there between the former EFCC, the suspended EFCC chairperson, and of course the suspended CBN governor. And you could argue that if we believe the allegations from the president that both the policies they actually tried to put out, was to stop him from winning election, then you might also argue that it could be payback time for him. He is in the saddle right now, so he will do everything within his power to ensure that if these guys are guilty of the allegations, they will face the book. Let's not forget that the DSS in December went to court. Part of the things they filed in court was that Emefiele, was guilty of financing terrorism. They accuse him of other things. In fact, the president just a few days ago in Paris, did talk about how the financial system was rotten. Those were his words, rotten under Emefiele. So one way or the other, I would expect that as much as other governments or preceding governments have not done that, I would expect that if these guys are guilty and we have all the facts, not go with the arrest first before investigation. If they have all the facts, if the DSS can prove what they alleged in their court filings in December of Emefiele financing terrorism, of him, going through some illegal means to enrich some certain persons. In fact, the president even said that he could have as well, I'm talking President Tinubu now, and he could have as well continued with that tradition and maybe make money, but that's not the reason he was voted into power. If they have enough proof to back up the allegations, then I'm hoping that we could, get to a final solution. But again, we've seen these things happen a lot of times, from Ribadu till now, from other political heads. We've seen this kind of allegations made. They go through the media trial. At the end of the day, nothing happens.
Let me take you up on this. Do you think this erodes the credibility of that anti-graft agency if we have the chairman unceremoniously removed with allegations of corruption, abuse of office? Do you think Nigerians can trust an agency where the chairman is also complicit in what it is set up to fight?
The honest truth is that Nigerians don't trust anything government right now. Very few Nigerians trust the government. Let's not mince words. The average Nigerian before February, the general elections in February, didn't trust, government, because government hasn't, in many cases, given them enough reasons to trust them. Government hasn't. The sad thing, like you pointed out, is when we keep having all of these political. Remember that the EFCC is supposed to be the agency charged with fighting corruption, because let's not also forget that we were under military era for a long time, and because it was military era where the heads of state or the governors in the different states could just take decisions with decrees. They don't necessarily need to go through due process. A lot of rot, was done in the society. Now, when we came back to democratic rule, one of the ways that the former president, Olusegun Obasanjo, tried to see if he could, flush out some of these ills from the society was to create EFCC. But if since 2002 till now, we've had substantive chairmen, all of them, from Ribadu to Waziri to Lamode, now Bawa, Magu, all of them, we've had them facing these kind of allegations. It just puts the agency in bad light, and it makes the lack of trust that Nigerians have for the agency and other agencies of government, it just increases it.
Interesting. If you're just tuning in, it's a Nigeria Info Roundtable, the National Roundtable Day 3, and we have with me in the studio here Abayomi, and we have Ufuoma from the news manager in Lagos, Sam Oracle from Port Harcourt, and Kalada Batubo, the presenter of Hard Facts from Nigeria Info Port Harcourt, also. Started off with the Emefiele Bawa story, and a little curious as to how just a quick succession. The president decided, enough, gentlemen, get suspended. We need to interrogate. We need to investigate. But Nigerians are asking deeper questions to saying, why is it always happening, particularly with the anti-graft agency? How do we trust the agency? Ufuoma says Nigerians do not trust anymore. The trust level has depleted to a point where you would really need to earn the trust of the people. It feels from one government to the other. It's a struggle to get Nigerians to believe that the government means business.
And I guess it's even getting worse by the day because, like I had a discussion with you some other time, some time back rather. Nigerians are getting more interested in governance. We are getting more, the level of, and it's because of, well, let me say, Peter Obi factor has really, helped many youth to like.
It's a disruptor sort.
To like, I want to know how my even local government chairman will emerge. And by doing this, more questions will be asked. So now government will need to do more to convince us that they are doing the right thing. Unlike what nobody before, only few people care. If you like, just leave government. I'm not interested in anything they want to do. But now people are asking questions, and we can only get better once again.
We'll keep our fingers crossed and hope for the best. The reason we have this conversation, we have this station, we have this platform is to continue to interrogate things and talk about them and put people who need to be put on the spot, on the hot seat, demanding accountability at the end of the day. And even though the former president would rather just not have his name mentioned on this our show at all, because he says, do not disturb me, do not call me, do not ask me any question. I'll be in Bawa. You disturb me too much, I go to Niger Republic. He touched base in London a bit, but I'm sure he's back in the country. But before we look at the 1 month of President Bola Ahmed Tinubu's administration, we need to take a step back to Mr. Buhari's era and interrogate his performance. I mean, he was someone who tried his hand at it 4 times and cried on national TV that he wanted to be president. And Nigerians gave him the benefit of doubt that he was capable of effecting a change, one tenure after another. And some people are sitting back and really wondering, have we been shortchanged or he delivered on his promises? And maybe to be fair to looking at, if we could get from one of you, should I start with you, Sam, put you on the spot? Is it possible? I mean, if I had Gary Bashewu on the show today, it would use the entire 2 hours to properly articulate the achievement of the president. But does it resonate with you, Sam, in terms of that and what people in Port Harcourt are also saying about how President Buhari left Nigeria?
So I have to ask, unfortunately, can you hear me?
Yes, we can. Go ahead, Sam.
Okay, so before I get to talking about Buhari's administration, let me quickly agree with Ufuoma about people not trusting the EFCC. So the EFCC has been seen as a witch hunting tool. Before this year, before Bawa, before Emefiele, we have had situations where they were going after someone who was in the opposition party, and then the person crossed over to the ruling party, and all of a sudden, all sins were forgiven. So with Nigerians noticing this pattern, this trend, I mean, it's impossible for anybody to have faith in the commission. Secondly, I think that the unceremonious exit of EFCC chairman it has become the normal way to take them off that position. Because every president comes in and appoints his own person for EFCC. When the next person comes in, who obviously will have a different candidate, what is the best way to remove this EFCC chairman who may or may not have functioned and put one thing on his head? Because as we have seen, the trend of allegations from Waziri to Ribadu to Lamode to Mako, there were things they were accused of. Somehow it never led anywhere. The only thing it led to was that they were removed from that position and someone was put back. So that is how EFCC chairman get replaced, with an allegation. So that means whoever is going to be the next EFCC chairman, if they appoint you, don't go to church and give testimony, because the day you have to leave, you don't know what you'll be accused of.
I see.
So that's my take on that. And for our former president, Buhari, who says we should not disturb him. So unfortunately, we'll have to disturb him today. It's not very easy to look at the 8 years of Buhari without, having a confetti of emotions. a lot of people want to analyze his administration by simply answering, was his presidency a failure or a success? And it's not easy, because you have to look at different sectors. I have a few things that I want to look at. The first thing anybody analyzing the Buhari administration will look, think, and talk about is the medical tourism. There are reports from countless sources that state that our former president spent over 200 days outside Nigeria on medical tourism. And what makes this even worse is a lot of times we have no idea what he was treating. Sometimes we hear it is ear infection, and that time we hear is this one. Nigerians were speculating what was wrong with our president, but what we were certain of is that no health institution in our country was good enough to treat our own president. And that is what failure looks like, because there was nothing. Now, Garba Shehu, in his awesomeness, would always come out to defend the former president. And one of the many things he said was, the president has had the same medical team for many years. There was no point changing the team. He just had to stick with, the guys he knew from London. I also remember then when they said the president's ear had problems. Nigerians on Twitter say our president knew they hear what. It was supposed to be funny. But I mean, you will not blame people for coming to those conclusions, because we didn't know a lot. Secondly, there were questions from civil society as to how much is the medical tourism of our president costing the country? Because you fly, sometimes you don't even know where to do president. The president has gone. There were questions from civil society. Don't know how long he has to stay there. All we know is that he was going for medical checks. It was costing the country something. And anytime anybody talked about it, it was almost like we didn't have the right to speak about it. So in that regard, the fact that the president had reasons to leave this country to seek medical help, and there was nothing good enough to treat him right in this country, it looks like failure. Secondly, the handling of NSARS by President Buhari, I would say, was poor. Unfortunately, October 2020 is etched in Nigeria's history for unfortunate reasons. That's a legacy that has stuck with Buhari, which I'm sure he would not be proud of. Right? So there were cases of police brutality, and unfortunately, and this is the crazy thing, when Nigerians had issues, police misconduct, abuse, and all of that, Twitter was the sanctuary. Whenever there was a problem, a video had to trend on Twitter for it to be taken seriously enough for it to get attention. As a matter of fact, days leading to the NSAS protest, it was also another case of abuse that trended on the internet that got people so agitated that they had to take to the streets through major cities across the country to say we have had enough. And that was under a Buhari administration. Well, our former president was also known for borrowing a lot. Our debt profile was through the roof under Buhari's administration. Oh my goodness. We borrowed so much for reasons I have no idea what some of the money was for. And while we're doing that, our sugar daddy, Abacha, who was always sending pocket money almost every year, was returning money. Monies were coming back. Sometimes they say, this money will be given to the poorest of the poor. We have no idea. At some point, I was hoping to qualify as the poor. Let me know if some of it will come my way. But it never came. So management of finances under Buhari's administration leaves a lot to be desired. The only place that I know that there are many other successes. I'm hoping Kalada, Ufuoma, and you guys in Abuja will be able to point this out. I hear that I'm speaking just about the failures. The only place where it seemed like, Buhari tried was COVID-19. The way Nigeria handled COVID-19. I don't know if it's grace of God. I don't know if it's our immune system. I don't know if our sun is hotter. Somehow, COVID did not deal with us the way it dealt with. And should we give the president the credit? I honestly don't know. But I can tell you for free that the way the palliative thing was handled, that's also very bad. So maybe the casualties from Nigeria, the deaths, was not as much as was predicted. Because if you remember, they claimed that dead bodies, that if you come out on the streets of Nigeria, dead body will be like street lights. Unfortunately, that was not the case.
Well, they didn't quite say just Nigeria. They thought was for the entire Africa, and Africa was spared that horror story as a whole. I don't think Nigeria can be exempted for being extraordinary in the handling of it. It was just the entire continent did not have the kind of death figure that was projected by Gates and the wife and all of that at the end of the day. But we will not take it away from the president, Sam. It is still success. It was under his administration that we did not die like flies on the street due to COVID. Yeah? So, Sam, it will still count as a success to a certain
Well,
extent.
that's why I said
Can we
I don't
then
know
say-
if we should give him the credit. You know, I have no idea. So shout out to Buhari.
Sam, thank you very much. Let's hear Ufuoma's story here. I mean, Sam went from the medical tourism as a minor to the handling of NSAS, in which some people will tell you that there is an unwritten fear of protest in Nigeria as a result of how NSAS was handled. They were like, I want protest, don't forget October 2020, how it panned out and all of that. And then the borrowing, which is still hanging over our heads, 77 trillion naira debt. I mean, how are we even breathing at this point in time? When the president was saying, let the poor, it just feels like he's talking about every one of us, over 200 million Nigeria. You know, someone is kneeling on our neck at this point in time. But it's a lot of money to be hanging over our head at this point in time. The fear is taking us back to the Obasanjo era, where we literally had to go cap in hand begging, please now erase our debt for us at the end of the day. But Ufuoma, you know, looking at President Buhari, there are 3 areas he campaigned on, and he tried to consolidate on that in the second half of it, from corruption to security to the economy. I'm a little curious if you could find 1 or 2 of these areas where we could look at some positives, as you also highlight, you know, the drawback of his 8 years performance in Nigeria.
The thing about President Buhari's 8 years in power is that, for me as an individual, it taught me a brutal lesson about Nigeria, and that brutal lesson is that Nigeria's problems cannot be solved by an individual. It cannot. No matter how great your intentions are, no matter how well thought out your plans also are as president or as governor, you alone as the individual cannot do it. Quite a number of Nigerians, myself included, before 2015, you know, felt or had this belief that, you know, because of some of his antecedents in terms of not being a corrupt individual, having that integrity, you know, that President Buhari would come into the saddle and be able to change all of those narratives. But the brutal lesson of his 8 year in government, like I said, is that Nigeria's problem is a systemic problem. It's a system. It's not something that an individual can just come and with a wave of hand, you know, try to erase it. He had his best intentions. You know, he tried to do the little he could do, but I would argue that there were a lot more failures than there were success. Yes, I kind of agree with Sam, you know, that we might not necessarily look at it from a literal point of view, you know, because it's a bit complex. But the simple thing that every Nigerian can relate to it, and I mean every Nigerian, is that by May 29th, 2023, when President Buhari was leaving government, Nigerians, almost every Nigerian, even if not all, but a huge percentage of Nigerians are worse off than they were on May 29th, 2015, when he became president. That's the one thing that you cannot take away from the average Nigerian. The purchasing power is lesser right now. Inflation is higher. Inflation was about 8% or thereabout when President Buhari came into saddle. And between himself and Emefiele, the suspended CBN governor, inflation had risen to 22%. Somebody just mentioned, you know, I think it was you, Kimberly, who talked about our borrowings. We've gone from ways and means, 790 billion in 2015 to 23 trillion in 2022. That's a lot of money, you know, we've borrowed that possibly we might not be able to pay back, you know, in the next few years, you know, and there's every possibility that the inflation will continue to soar. And what that means is that the average Nigerian, you know, cannot buy what he used to buy before. You go to the market now, 1,000 naira tomato is about 4 or 5 seeds. It was not the case 8 years ago before Buhari came into power. The normal Gari you buy in the market was it's more expensive now in 2023 than it was in 2015. So for the average Nigerian, there's no English you're going to speak to them to make them believe that the president tried his best. But fair play to him, he also had to deal with two recessions and COVID-19 and the Russia-Ukraine war. It really, for any government, even for the Western world, the recession plus the Ukraine war plus COVID, dealt a lot of heavy blow to most Western economies. So Nigeria is not an exception. The one area you would give credit to the president is in terms of infrastructure, even though that one self has his question mark on it. But the president did do well in that sense. You are not going to take that away from him. Quite a lot of landmark projects. A lot of our airports got a facelift. A lot of our airports got facelifts. The Niger Bridge, the second Niger Bridge. That's something you can, you will give him credit for. You're not going to take away the fact that some of our major roads, were actually done, in his 8-year tenure. You're also going to give him credit for some wonderful legislations, the Finance Act, even though it was not used, or even though it didn't totally, it wasn't implemented as it should, as many of us thought it would. You also have to give the president credit for the Electoral Act 2022. Some presidents would not have signed it, even though we know why he did not sign it before the 2019 election, but that's a story for another day. The truth of the matter is that he eventually signed it in, and it's a brilliant piece of legislation. If only INEC and Nigerian politicians would have used it the way it should be used. So in terms of some of those legislations, a lot of them get. I can't really remember them right now, but there are quite a lot of good things he did. But in terms of security, which let's also not forget, like you pointed out, was one of the things he campaigned on. Yes, before his tenure, a couple of our local governments, I think about 17 of them, were under the territory of Boko Haram and insurgents. Before he left power, Nigeria reclaimed all of that. But our security problems now sort of multiplied into different stages. We went from fighting Boko Haram to fighting bandits, who could just enter towns and literally just sack everybody or kill everybody there. In the Southwest, the Yoruba Nation agitators reared their ugly head. The president, that's the former president, did not handle IPOB well in the Southeast. Before his presidency, IPOB was just, he wasn't as quote unquote dangerous as they are or they were before he left office. Due to the way he handled it and the way he possibly handled the Nnamdi Kanu situation, IPOB escalated and became, terrible, worse than it actually was. So yes, he won some battles in terms of security, but I think he lost the war at the end of the day. Economy, I've said that already. Nigerians are worse off in 2023, than where they were in 2015. The one good thing he did is in terms of his infrastructure and some very brilliant legislations, under his regime. If I was to rate him, I'll possibly give him 35% over 100, because the one thing that connects everybody is the economy. His policies, Buhari failed to understand that the policies he tried to put for 30 years, and so he was doing closure. They did not, in fact, they made things worse for him. So,
all right.
Sadly, the present president is in the saddle, and he would have to clean up, some of the mess that he inherited.
Ufuoma, thank you very much. When you said 35%, my math is very rusty. I was struggling very hard to compute that and see if it even gets up to. It's a fail. 35%.
It's fail now.
With what he said about security, the truth is, it depends on who is saying what. It depends on the area you are. It depends on how it's really, how you were.
Is there any area that is spared from the
Good.
insecurity?
Good. As much as I will agree that it was a failure, but I remember before Buhari's administration, I was in Abuja here, and my parents called me from Lagos like every day, come back home, because Lagos was practically safer than Abuja. What are you doing? You want to die? I was staying at Massacre when the second bomb blast at Nyanya happened. Massacre to Nyanya is very far. I felt the vibration in my kitchen. I felt the vibration. Now imagine. But it was so serious then that all these long buses in Abuja,
The Aerofy buses, yeah?
If you want to enter Aerofy bus and you are carrying a big bag, nobody will enter.
It wasn't just the buses, even churches and everywhere. You're carrying a knapsack and the bag.
I remember an experience. I was in the bus and somebody dropped a bag. And the question was, who owns this bag? Who owns this bag? Nobody's, talking. Everybody left. If you see the way we fled, but it wasn't like that. But during Buhari's era, then should we then say security is better? That's why I said
maybe if you say this in southern Kaduna, where they can't sleep with their eyes closed.
You get it. That's why I said it depends on who is saying what. It depends on the area you are, the angle you are. No, but collectively, if we will collectively look at it, well, he was able to some extent, reduce it in the northeast where it was, hidden. But what about the other places? Talking about the agitations, Tinubu's administration practically gave Nnamdi Kanu, a cheap popularity.
Tinubu's?
Buhari's administration. How is it that you're carrying Nnamdi Kanu to court and you blocked everywhere? So people that do not know Nnamdi Kanu will be forced to ask, why is the road blocked? Or Nnamdi Kanu is going to court. Who is Nnamdi Kanu? They started, telling. So the guy became, that very, very popular. So he really
I want to disagree with
failed
Abayomi.
in.
Wait a minute. Who is disagreeing? Sam, is that you or Kalada?
Yes, I am disagreeing. It's Sam.
Okay.
So the first point you made, your parents were checking on you to ensure that you were okay because the blast was shaking your kitchen. We know how Nigerian parents are wired. Panic is embedded in their DNA. Everybody here must have gotten a message from their parents on WhatsApp telling you not to eat you are coming from the north because they spray pepper that kills people. These things happen. I can understand maybe, it was tense at some point. It eventually became calm. But my response to that is, under the administration of President Buhari, insecurity had a regional identity. Before, we were just dealing with Boko Haram in the northeast. Later, it became bandits. Later, it became unknown gunmen in the east. It also became head-on clash in some other parts. So every region in Nigeria had its version of insecurity. And it led to the loss of lives. There were times when maybe there was calm here and there, but insecurity was widespread. So I think Abayomi, yes, while your point is valid, your one case of disturbance that eventually became calm may not reflect the reality of the entire nation.
That's exactly what I said. I said it depends on the angle you're looking at it. But the truth is, when you now look at it holistically, you agree with me that it was, a total failure
in the handling of security.
Yes, because this one, okay, you just talked about Southern Kaduna. You know what, like every day you hear,
No, from Southern Kaduna to Benue State, even up to 2 weeks back, they still had the case, Plateau State, Katsina, Zamfara.
So if I, as a person, is saying where I'm living is safer during his administration, how about other places? Would they say the same thing? That's what I'm saying.
Abayomi, it just reminds me of how Abuja people like to feel like we're a special breed of Nigerians. The same thing with the if you need to make 25% argument. We're the people who, if you don't get our 25%, you can't be president people. That's the argument Abayomi is bringing. Since bomb did not blow here under his tenure, it was good, but it's not the... It's, 10 blind men and the elephant. That's your perspective, but that's not the big picture at this point in time. Kalada,
please, let me say something.
Okay, go ahead.
Now, thank you. Now, I want to play the devil's advocate here. I like to think that we can put all the responsibility on the president. Now, I'll use an example of River State. When the IPOB thing was beginning to gain a lot of momentum, and just neighboring Imo State, Imo State, we started hearing about killings, assassinations, and then it somehow entered into River State, just near the boundary, towards the airport road. And some security men were killed. And then the next thing was getting close to town. It was getting close to the local governments near the governor's local government, that's MOI local government, where yet again some policemen were killed. The former governor swung into action. Now, this is my point. The governors are chief security officers of their states. Yes, I agree. It was just Boko Haram before the administration of Buhari. But then again, when you talk about banditry, when you talk about IPOB, what were the governors in these regions doing? IPOB could have been something that the 5 state governors at the time in the Southeast could have handled by coming together and collaborating. Like I said, if you go back to the previous administration here in River State, the governor was very emphatic on the fact that IPOB cannot operate. Now, he gave out some directives and policies that looked like it was anti certain people. But the point is, it was able to spare River State from all the trouble. I mean, there was a time when they were saying that there would be sit at home here in River State. And we're able to stop all of that. In some states in the Southeast, there's still the sit at home happening. And you see that they have not been able to quell the IPOB. So I don't think all of the security responsibility should be on the table of the president, even though, yes, you can argue that is the, what do you call it? You want to say something, Koma?
Yes, I want to totally disagree with, not totally, disagree with you in the sense that the president is the chief security officer of the country. He is the commander-in-chief. Our governors are just chief security officers in name and not in reality. The state commissioners of police in different states do not answer to the governor. If there is an army, if there's an army, GOC or whatever they call it, in the respective states, they do not answer to the governor. The governor is just the chief security officer in name, on paper. It's not the reality. So everything that has to do with security, unfortunately, still falls on the table of the president. I might want to agree with you that, some of the governors possibly could have been a bit more proactive than they were. Let's not even get into the conversation of some of the atrocities or some of the allegations that were leveled against the former River State governor, Nyesom Wike, and how he dealt with some of those IPOB uprisings. If we want to get into those allegations, we might not even end the conversations here. So let's just leave it, the way it is. But the point I'm trying to make here is that everything still boils down to the table of the former President Buhari. Like I said, I was in Port Harcourt, when the whole IPOB thing started. Up until 2017, IPOB was just, it was just, they just talk, and talk. There was really not much. The issues really started and became worse, when Nnamdi Kanu's house in Abia State, or was it his father's house, was invaded. It was his father's. It was when he was invaded, and I think it was picked up or he ran away. I think that's when the whole issue started. Sam talked about the fact that security became a regional thing. That's because the president honestly did not care. He matter of fact said it in his inaugural broadcast that he's for everybody and for nobody. He then also mentioned that it's 95-5. You could argue that, in fact, some people accuse him of tacitly supporting some of these clashes, either by not saying anything or by looking away. The farmer header clash has been in existence since I was born, even before I was born. But it looked like under his administration, he went to a different level. The ones we get to hear in the news, it's just a little, it's just a tiny fraction of what actually has continued to happen even till today in Benue, in Taraba, in Plateau, in Southern Kaduna. You could literally see how the people of Southern Kaduna were excited that their son or one of them was appointed the chief of army staff, because the belief is that, since the head of the army is now one of our own, he'll be able to help us stop the unwanted killings that has been going on for God knows how long, and then even became such a terrible thing under the Buhari administration. The point in all of this is, yes, I agree with you that some of the governors could have been a bit more proactive, but everything still boils down to the chief security officer of the nation, and the way he handled security, it just was nothing to write home about.
Some people would tell you that even the governors cannot give express directive to commissioners of police in their states.
Exactly.
So you can't give directive high up. They answer to the president and the president alone. At this point in time, when it comes to security, we know how the chain of command operates in the country.
Can we have a governor that will say, keep my security vote and protect my people?
What does that even mean in plain English?
How is that going to happen when millions and billions get into power? They won't do that. See.
Okay.
All right.
Can I just say something?
Okay, you can say that in say a minute or two, so that we'll move on to the next story. Go ahead.
Quickly. Now, Ufuoma, see, we've seen state governors who have worked in tandem, hand in gloves with commissioner of police to rid their state of criminality. Now, I'm not saying that the state governor can give express orders to commissioners of police, but we've seen where they have come out and they have said, see, let's work together and ensure such kind of crime or criminalities do not exist in the state. And we've also seen in the south western region where the governors came there and said, see, whatever trouble is happening in other regions would not get to this part of the country. So I'm saying that these governors could have done as much as possible to ensure. I'm not, what's the word now? I'm not saying the former president should not take any responsibility at all. But I'm saying and I'm arguing that he cannot take all of the responsibilities, because the governors also have the responsibility of ensuring the safety of their own citizens in their state.
We saw some governors who made an attempt from Zamfara State who tried to have some sort of amnesty deal with the terrorists, terrorizing his more than that was saying, all right, down to this armament policy. They saw that his face was the federal right way in, tried it and it blew on his head. And we know we are not used to that in context. The president had it, he was not more support at only federal government of my first state, so that you need the central government, the DT, and how to, how the architecture of the security architecture plays out at the end of the day, even down to the state level. But Kalada, I get your point, and I'm sure a lot of people agree with you, because even here in Abuja, we kept asking northern governors, what are you doing? How are you rubbing minds together to see what ideas you can even bring to the table to offer to the president, and saying, I understand my state. What can we do different? Because every region apparently has some uniqueness to the security it was dealing with. From the banditry, kidnapping, to terrorism, to farmer, that is the narrative of the former government, the farmer headers clash, but people called it an ethnic cleansing and encroachment of space and whatnot. We all did not agree on a single narrative of what the problem was in the north central part of Nigeria, particularly Benue State, when he started. And then in the southern part of the country, it had its own uniqueness also. So yes, you would definitely need the input of the state governors in helping to tackle this. They collect security votes, don't they? Now, it is still pretty much a big problem, even now. We have President Bola Ahmed Tinubu. He's not talking 97%, 5%. He's not saying it's for everybody and for nobody. But he's saying, I shall govern on your behalf and would never rule over you. I will dialogue, I will consult. And it's 1 month in office, and you want to see how these words are translating into reality. Is it dialoguing? Is it consulting? Is he working on our behalf with the policies that he's introduced? One area that we touch on, gentlemen, is the fact that security chiefs were changed. And I know the height of President Buhari, Nigerians were literally crying and sobbing, begging Mr. President, change our security chief. He changed them, but nothing more changed afterwards.
Well, you guys wanted me to change them, and I've changed them, so...
All right, then. But then this president is... Well, he has gone beyond body language to say, I'm going to change them, I'm going to get a new crop of people, and we see the mix such that Nigerians cannot criticize him and say, oh, they're from one section of the country and or whatnot. He kind of like evenly distributed, maybe not so evenly, but there's a representation from everywhere, from every part of the country, even down to Southern Kaduna, where they're jubilating that it's someone who is from the region and would appreciate the challenge that they're going through. So that's it. But then he's also introduced several other policies. As we look at 1 month of President Bola Ahmed Tinubu in office, service security chiefs, change, impressive. He ordered the suspension of CBN and EFCC chairman for interrogation. And then also looking at monetary policy, where they're talking about, is it floating of the naira? As I sit here, Abayomi, I'm even still trying to wrap my head as to what it is. Because every time I hear that the naira is depreciated, like, what exactly gong is going on? Have you tried to want to exchange it?
Well, I think it's about 800 or something naira now.
Exactly.
To $1.
So how much patience do we need for it to get to a point where it will make sense? Because at this point, it's not adding up. The math is not mathing.
Well,
but that's not to take you specifically on this. But we're looking at 1 month in office of the president and the policies that he's come up with to say, all right, is it the right trajectory he's traveling at this point in time?
Well,
is it a tough question? It felt like a curveball. Like you need to breathe to respond to that.
Well, so far, if you look at his 1 month plus in office, 1 month. Today is the
30th.
So 1 month and a day. In office. Well, so far so good. He's been taking decisions, unlike before, where whenever the president takes a decision, you see, majority of the population coming to criticize it. But for his decisions, you hardly, have, a good number of people, coming against it. They've been like, applauding. But
they've been applauding over subsidy removal.
No.
I haven't seen. I don't hang around your circle of people who applaud because people have been calling.
Let's start from that subsidy removal. Would you say he has a choice? For me, the announcement was wrong. That's just the only thing I will criticize. The announcement. You're just coming into office, and the first thing you pull, your first day in office, you threw everybody
the bandage.
The announcement was just ill-timed, but he doesn't have a choice. And again, is it actually good? That's another question. Even IMF has always said it. You cannot be borrowing money to finance, subsidy. You can't. You cannot. You have to remove it. But the point is, who will survive the more? That is the question. Before now, my full tank is around 22,000. Now it's around 65. I've not even tried to fill my tank. So, who will survive the more? For them, would it affect them? Of course, we all know no. But the truth is, people that the total removal will affect, they know themselves. We will also, pay. We also have this sacrifice to make. But the people, how many liters are we using in Nigeria per day? Can we make can we come out and tell the figure and know how much we are actually spending every day?
That's one very controversial area.
And it's because of the people that are, cashing out on this. Subsidies, is removed in Nigeria, and you see protests in Cameroon, protests in other neighboring countries. The question is why? Is it their headache? We've not even carried placard here, and they are protecting. We know what is responsible for all these, and we know the people that are, eating into this big time. So I would not agree to the day he announced it. But my sister, there's nothing as good as that for me as a person.
A good call. Kalada, we'll start with you on this one. 1 month and 2 days of the subsidy removal, looking at 1 month plus of President Bola Ahmed Tinubu. And I will give Nigerians credit here, though. People don't seem to carry it on their faces. It just feels like everybody's giving it time to just understand where we're headed with all of this and just asking basic questions at this point in time. Because some people thought, the streets are going to be packed with protesters. But surprise, surprise, people are adjusting, cutting down excesses, not, roaming, driving around town and seeing how they can manage the situation. But what do you make of it? 1 month. Do you agree with Abayomi? People are applauding some of the positive policies so far.
I call it an applause. No, people are going through tough times now, I should say. Inflation is up there, 22+%. Unemployment would also skyrocket. As a matter of fact, I did see a report on Nairametrics that says by the end of June, inflation might get up to 30%. So people are not smiling. The cost of food commodities, it's up there, it's skyrocketed. Like he said, it takes a lot now to fill the tank of a car. And so transportation itself is also gone up. However, for Nigeria to develop, I've always said that we have to make some tough decisions. And if I were to talk on the Buhari administration, that's one point I will always, hit at, because he failed to make some of the tough decisions. But then again, you want to liken it to some of the decisions made during Buhari's time. Tough decisions that the people said, it's too tough on us. So let it not be now. Let it not be now. And the question I always asked at the time, if we don't do it now, when are we going to do it, right? So everybody agrees with the fact that, okay, it's overdue. It's time for petrol subsidy to go. It's time for us to, stop the scam, like they call it. They call it a scam. It's time for us to get it done with. Let's see how we can use that money to develop ourselves. But then my argument is we've got 4 refineries. We could have, started refining first before, removing the petrol subsidy. That's number one. Right from Abacha's time, if you do some research, you realize that the refineries have been deepened in terms of performance. During Abacha's time, it was at 60% capacity. By Obasanjo's time, it had dropped. By 2017, the refineries had stopped working. Now, the question is, we've been trying to refurbish. Could we have privatized it, allowed it to start working? Look at Dangote. Dangote is trying to get his refinery working. He's just one individual. Why couldn't we have done the same? Our major source of income is crude oil. So why couldn't we just ensure that sector is up and running optimally before we start? Unification of the foreign exchange. Let's get into that one now. You're asking, what does it mean to float the naira? It means that market forces to, a large extent will have an impact on our currency. But we're not producing. We're not that's the reason why the former president also closed the border, because he wanted to boost local production. And that's the story of Nigeria, where we have great ideas, but we have poor implementation. So we're not producing locally. Our agricultural sector is still nothing to write home about, even though we've seen some improvements. Manufacturing sector is crying due to the high cost of production. So you're not producing locally and you're floating your currency. It means that you're going to, feel the effect really, really, really tough. So the argument would have been, why couldn't we have started something, basically the refining, so we don't have to spend all of that money that we're spending on whatever we do call subsidy and the likes. And we could have now, reduced to a large extent the major thing that we import, which is, of course, the petrol. And it would have given us enough money to do other things, and the people would not have felt the effect. But then let's get back to Buhari's administration. He focused so much on infrastructure. And I would argue at the time that infrastructure is good. It's good. We need good roads. We need all the things he was trying to provide. But was it the priority at the time? The priority for me would have been to start industries where, yet again, would have been generating enough revenue. The DMO, the Debt Management Office, will tell you that about 85% of money that will be generated this year will be used to service debts. So that's also a problem. So basically, I'm giving all the statistics to say that the current president would have looked at all of these and would have slowed the pace at which he was removing all the things he has removed. He has removed subsidy when it comes to petrol. He has removed subsidy when it comes to the foreign exchange. And there's something else he did again. You talked about changing service chiefs. For me, I think that was long overdue. That was something that we needed. Even though the previous service chiefs had done something a little bit better than the Buhari era. But I do think that basically the president should have slowed down the pace of which he did some of the things, especially the economic policies, because trust me, Nigerians are feeling it really, really tough. World Bank says 7.1 million people will fall into poverty by the end of this year. My own personal prediction or forecast, more than 7.1 million people will fall into poverty. Because when you look at it, if you're earning 200,000 naira, does it get you to the end of the month? I mean, really, it doesn't get you to the end of. So even those people who were said to be middle class people will find it very difficult to get by. Your house rent will get up in terms of price. Transportation is already up. We are now looking at the back and forth between NEC and the presidency concerning electricity tariff, which also means that if that one goes up, a lot of people will start crying. So when you look at it, my own argument or debate is the president should have slowed down. Very good policies, very wonderful policies in my opinion. But it would have,
the timing
should have been phase by phase.
Oh, all right, phase by phase. And you start to ask yourself, when would be even a good time to get any of those things removed for Nigerians as well? For
Kimberly.
Yeah, go ahead, sir.
Yeah, the truth of the matter is that subsidy was removed the very day President Buhari signed the PIA last year. We were just postponing the evil day, so to speak. The very moment the president signed PIA, subsidy was officially removed. It's just that I think it was Garba Shehu who tried to mention that a few days ago when he put out, a statement on behalf of the former president. There's also the political angle to it. The president at the time, and I kind of understand, could not have taken such a drastic decision a few months to a general election. The APC would have lost woefully, which is also why I put a lot of blames on the former president. I would think that, first of all, let's also not forget that it was him, the president, former president, and the present president, President Bola Tinubu, who more or less tacitly supported labor unions way back in 2012 to fight removal of subsidy. Let's not forget it. It was just about 11 years ago. Yes, the labor unions were at the forefront of fighting the former president, Goodluck Jonathan, But the present-day government, the APC officials, including former President Muhammadu Buhari and today's President Bola Tinubu, they supported labor unions against the removal of petrol subsidies 11 years ago. 11 years after, sadly, they are the ones who are now, preaching to us about why it must be removed. Now, I also agree with Abayomi when he said the timing. There was supposedly a budget for petrol subsidies till today, as in today, 30th of June. It was supposed to end today, 30th of June. But the president, his inaugural speech, I thought that was a gaffe because the oil marketers immediately, in fact, 2-3 days before his inaugural speech, they were already anticipating that something like that would happen. And immediately announced it. You saw how all of them just changed, the price of petrol. And we all know how the price of petrol affects literally everything, in Nigeria, sadly. So these are some of the difficult decisions that I think that the country needs to be. We can't run away from it. There's no way you are going to spend a huge chunk of your revenue on paying subsidies. It doesn't work that way, But here's also what I think. As much as these are hard decisions, that must be taken, how about the government themselves, all branches of government, especially the executive and the legislature, look themselves in the eye. You can't be telling the ordinary Nigerian to tighten your belt, cut down costs, face reality. But you, on your own, you're not doing it. 2 days ago, it was a public relations disaster for the president. You saw the number of cars. Yes, the argument was, it was not just the president. It was the president, it was state governors, it was legislators, and you have security officials. But how on earth do you go with that long line of convoys, that cars, that, let's not forget, the petrol that powered those cars are being paid by taxpayers? It's the average Nigerian who pays for it. 500 naira plus for a liter of petrol. That's what you're using to fuel over 100 cars. And you're going on a convoy. We should start, the government should start thinking about cutting costs on themselves. Yeah, if you lead by example that way, if you're able to cut down on the number of essays and essays and the essay that you have, if the legislators on their own part are able to cut down on their budget, you see that every legislator is entitled to about 5 aides or thereabout that is being paid by taxpayers' money. If we can cut down all of these wastes, the average Nigerian would look at, you removing petrol subsidy or the one that is going to come in effect from tomorrow, 40% increase in electricity tariff. We will understand that, okay, yes.
No, Ufuoma, let me hold you here with the 40% so that people don't start to hyperventilate and freak out. Didn't the federal government say that they haven't approved that just yet and we can breathe until that happens? Is it coming into effect tomorrow? I think I saw it yesterday in the news to saying not approved just yet. So I do not think it will, except we're blindsided.
We all know these things work. The discos will do what they want to do. The federal government can sometimes make announcements, but the discos will do what they want to do. Point is that let's even agree that, let's, for the sake of this conversation, agree that the electricity tariff increase will not start tomorrow. Petrol subsidies that have been removed already has made inflation skyrocket. Transportation, places you'd normally go for 500 naira, it's now times 2, times 3. Abayomi just talked about how to fill his car. The tank is about 3 times what he used to fill. That's the life of the average Nigerian. People are looking at how to cut down, on things that are unnecessary. In fact, I think somebody mentioned 7.1. I think it was Kalada mentioning 7.1 million. I think the actual figure is over 100 million. Nigerians are going to go into the poverty line. What that means is that we've been acting like we're a rich country, but we are very poor. But if you look at our politicians and the people running government, you will not know that Nigeria is a poor country. Because one governor is still going with 30-car convoy. Some years ago, I went into I'm not going to mention the state, but I went into the government house of one of the states. My goodness, there was a petrol station in the house. So, and here's me thinking that almost all government houses have the average petrol station on the road to buy petrol. There's a petrol station in government house that fuels all of their cars. So they don't pay money for this. And when they don't pay money for these things, they don't understand the hardship that the average Nigerian is facing. So yes, I'm for some of these policies that are long overdue. I am. But let's also see those in government act like we are the poor nation they say we are. Let them also cut down on cost of government. Why do we need 2 national assemblies? Why do we need a Senate and a House of Reps? Somebody should explain that to me. Why do we need that?
All right.
Why do we need to pay 3 senators and House of Rep members? If we start seeing all of that
off your mic.
from government
Off your mic.
I wanted to ask him to breathe. Ufuoma, breathe a little, because you're asking for a unicameral legislator at this point in time. That has gone very deep. But yeah, I mean, sometimes you start to interrogate certain things, because we know that what we spend on governance in this country is astronomical. It's staggering. A good chunk of our resources go into just fueling and oiling, greasing the wheel of governance in the country. And if you're telling the people to tighten up a little and get on this austerity measure or structural adjustment program, say, you need to reflect also. People need to see that we're all in it together, which is where Nigerians stand on one side is saying, I don't think you're feeling the bite like we are at this point in time. But Sam, let's get you jumping your 2 cents quickly here. And as we're talking about this, we also look at the governors because they're not spared from this. They've also spent 1 month, 2 days in office. And you start to look at the state level. Are we getting anything coming out from there in terms of their policy? I mean, Rivers State, for example, is a state of interest for a lot of Nigerians, thanks to the former governor of the state. A lot of eyes are there to seeing if it's going to continue that trajectory.
Yeah, I agree with you. I completely agree with what Kalada and Ufuoma have said. And it's difficult to add to perfection, So I don't want to add to whatever they've said. However, Abayomi says he uses about 60-something thousand to fill his tank. And I want to ask my brother, what do you drive?
At this point, I have new level of respect for Abayomi.
No, it now depends on how many days will he last. That's the question.
Exactly.
So that's it.
Okay. It's okay. I see you're not the boss, so you're really.
Yeah, I am. I'm not operating under Nigeria economy, actually.
Yeah, the governors. Asking about, 1 month in office, both for the president and the governor, it's like when you have a new neighbor moving to a compound, they spend very little time, and somebody is already asking, this is your neighbor. How far? What is this person like? The person will tell you, well, I need more time to assess, But what President Tinubu has done with the little time he has sounds like 1 year worth of work. But coming down to River State, right now, the most popular word in this state is consolidation. Because the governor has promised that he would consolidate on the success of his predecessor. And the first thing he has done is to recycle most of the commissioner positions from the previous administration. And as you can tell, a lot of people are complaining. So what's going on? Is it that we don't have young, vibrant? When I'm at the Money Crossfire, some people even call to recommend names of people that can be appointed in those positions. So right here in River State, I also see that it's going to be very difficult for the governor to do right by the people, because whatever he does, they will say, oh, former Governor Wike told him to do that. If he moves left, they say, that's where Wike wants him to go. So that's the position Governor Simfubara has found himself. I know that with time, if he does what he's supposed to, people will get to believe in his governance. But right now, what Rivers residents are talking about is about if there's a puppet master, and with the appointment of commissioners from the previous administration, it's not looking very much in his favor. We had a building collapse yesterday. I don't know if that's relevant, but a lot of things are happening in Rivers, I can assure you. Kalada, would you like to?
Kalada, you want to jump on this, build on it a bit?
Okay, all right. So, like Sama said, it's a continuum of governance for the first time in Rivers State. So remember when we got democracy back in 1999, we had Dr. Peter Odili as governor. And then when it was time to transition, there was a little issue there, the brief stay of Omeya, and then the coming of the former Minister of Transportation, Rotimi Amechi. And then after, as Rotimi Amechi's time in office was about to be done, he moved from the PDP, as at the time PDP were the ones in office. He moved from the PDP to the APC. So transitioning yet again was an issue. And so this is the first time there is the handshake when there is a transition. And a lot of people, like Sam has said, are seeing the governor, seeing Fubara as, a stooge of the former governor. However, I would like to say, let's give it time. Let's give it time. because he has also said he's new to politics, is on the job, and hopefully he wants to take the new Rivers vision, which is of course still from the previous administration, to another level. He wants to take it to another level. So let's see what this other level is. 100 days in office, 1 month in office, I should say, 1 month in office. And he just had his first executive, what do you call it now? It's executive meeting, the one with the cabinet and all of that. So they just had their first session. And so we're still looking at it. We don't yet know how the government will go, but yeah, it's been quiet, so to say.
You know, a lot of people say we tend to focus more, and I think because of the federal system we operate and the fact that more power is vested on the central government, so more eyes on the central as to what are you doing first 100 days in office in terms of your policies, your appointment, and the likes of it. And we cut this governor some slack, saying, have they even come up with any policy so far, state level? What kind of appointment are they making? Are they bringing fresh ideas to the table at this point in time? But that's why it's important to look at it. The thing is, here in the federal capital, and that's why we're asking Port Harcourt people. We don't have anyone from Lagos.
Okay. So talking about...
Ufuoma can speak for Lagos too. Hello. Go ahead.
Okay, so talking about appointments, we have about 14 commissioners now, in operation. About 10 of them, if I have my mathematics correct, about 10 of them were from the previous cabinet. That's the cabinet of the previous governor. Yeah, so about four or five of them retained the same position, while some of them got switched portfolios. So basically, that's why the narrative is, this is like it's the former governor. Yes, he's still in office. But I'm very interested in seeing how this new Governor Sim Fubara, approaches governance. He's been talking, he's been making some statements, but let's see how it goes. We don't yet know what the policy direction is. All we're consolidating. And if we go back to what the former governor's administration was like, it was basically infrastructural development and trying to make the state, attractive for investors to come in. And so maybe that's what he wants to do. I do not know.
Well, and let's hope that's what the people want also, because, to talk about, as much as you have an infrastructural development, you need to also develop the human capital index in the state and not have fancy buildings and flyovers while the people are groaning and wallowing in absolute poverty. You want to see how that is impacting directly on, human capital of the state also. The governor of Lagos State is a second-term governor, so it's building on pretty much what he started. I followed with interest how he governed Lagos the first year. It will be a surprise if he decide to take a different direction. It will be building definitely on that. But generally also, gentlemen, looking at this new administration, it's just a month and a few days. We're going to take stock of their 100 days in office. We're going to take stock of 4 years in office at 1 year, 2, 3, 4, 5 years. And Nigerians, as much as some people are still following the election petition tribunal to see how it's playing out and panning out, people are also praying that this government delivers on its promises to improve our economy and reduce unemployment, which the president talked about in his inaugural speech, to saying we're going to do something about this through the policies that we introduce, issues around, the economy, boosting the economy, diversifying it as much as he can, are also critical areas to look at. But then it's also expected that as much as they've set their agenda, Nigerians will put them on their toes by, setting agenda forward also to say, this is what we expect you to do, because it's a democracy. It's about the people. And the people have an active role as an office of the citizen to saying, Mr. President, we know you have this very brilliant idea that you have for us, but this is something also that is important for us. Don't you agree, Abayomi, at this point in time? In setting agenda, it can't just be all that they have to give. The people would also have something to put forward.
Well, the first question is, the ones they promised, how
have they delivered?
How have they delivered? before you start.
Are you asking it the government of a month and 2 days?
No,
or the administration generally?
You're planning to set agenda for them. Remember, they have their own blueprint, which they have promised you during the electioneering campaigns that they were going to do. Now, to what extent are they following in that which they have promised before you are now coming to like, we still need you to do this? You understand? So what I think is, I think this whole problem it starts from the state, if you ask me. If my state is doing well, I don't have a business in Abuja. So, but most of these governors, they just come to sit, to just waste 4-8 years and nothing new. It's just for them to, just gather wealth and leave. And that was why during the time of it's unfortunate I'm going back, during the time of this NSAS, protest, when I started seeing some government officials, some even governors, also calling for, good governance, that was when I knew that thing might fail. Because you as a governor, you have a role to play, a major role to play. See, it starts from my ward to my local government, to my state, before federal. If the state is doing what it should do and my local government is faring well, I don't need to leave. I don't need to ask, what is the president doing for me? The president automatically, the federal is choked. That's just the truth.
But then going by what we even have in the exclusive list, it chokes the central authority. So there's no way you can be in it. Go ahead.
Kimberly, the problem actually is that we are a federal republic only in name. We say Federal Republic of Nigeria. We're supposedly a republic, where the federating states are supposed to be, independent. But it's just in name. And that's where I have a big problem, with the APC government. And I'll keep saying it. Because the elements who formed the APC, one of the cardinal points, and it goes all the way back to now President Tinubu, when he was Lagos State Governor or the leader of the opposition, one of the key things they kept harping on or talking about is the fact that Nigeria needs to practice true federalism. That Nigeria needs to be in a situation where everybody does not have to go to the center. Like Abayomi is, speculating. We shouldn't have a business in Abuja. Imo State can as well deal with some of the issues they have from their own revenue. Rivers State can as well, on its own, meet its demands. Lagos State can move in whatever direction they want to move in, But because we're not practicing true federalism, a lot of power is concentrated on the center. And that's why everybody wants to be president. So for me, the APC government when they were in opposition, they were harping on how we need to restructure the country, so that everybody can move at their own pace. But they've been in power now for 8 years. They've not done the things that should have been done to ensure that we get to the position where they were advocating before they came into power. Like I mentioned, they were at the forefront of fighting petrol subsidy removal 11 years ago. Today, they are championing it. They were at the forefront of, fighting for true federalism and not concentrating power at the center. Now they are the ones in power, and nobody is saying anything about restructuring country at that pace. It just feels to me like you also are the same, right? But when you are some of those they campaign, I think it's too early to start, passing judgments on either the president or the governors. 1 month is really not enough. But again, by their fruits we shall know them. I mean, that's how we say that statement. Bottom line is,
what is the meaning of that statement, Ufuoma?
If you ask me, I will ask. The guys in power know what to do if they want this country to move forward. But the truth also is that sometimes a lot of the guys in power know what they want to do before they get into that position. By the time they get into the position, they understand how enormous and how problematic it can actually be to handle either a local government or a state or the country as a whole as president. Sometimes it's easier said than done, when you're out of government. So it's easy for you to criticize and, say all the things that you can, say all the magic you can do out of power. But when you get into that position, it becomes a bit problematic, because the honest truth is that Nigeria's problems are not going to be solved one day. It can't even be solved in 8 years, But I think for Nigerians, a lot of Nigerians just want to see government in action. They want to see that policies that will help them. They want to be able to go to the market and not see that everything has skyrocketed. They want to be able to feed themselves, because it's going to get worse. That's the honest truth. It will get worse. So Nigerians, if you're listening to Nigeria Info right now, tighten your belts the most. Cut down on unnecessary waste. Anything that is not productive, cut down on it, because a lot of these policies that are being they are needed policies. They are policies that we should have even started doing 5, 6, 8 years ago. Maybe now it would have been better for us, but because of some reasons, maybe political reasons or lack of will, the former administration could not do it. The present administration.
Is it not just the subsidy removal that is the only policy that people feel we should have done away with before now? Because you're making it sound like there's surplus of policies that should have been dealt with before now, that the government has dealt with in the first month.
The unification of the forex is also another policy that is also, we concentrate more on the petrol subsidy, because it also has as easy as we see petrol subsidy, but it also has its effect. And these are things we should have done, a long time ago, but better late than never.
And in giving us your concluding thought to looking at, do you think this administration is going to wow Nigerians? Because I would say they're not the most popular. Even the president himself knows not everybody wanted him, but he's here. And if he's going to win the heart of Nigeria, time will tell. But what do you say as we wrap up? Sam, let's start with you. 60 seconds, please.
Well, I'll wrap this up the same way I wrap most of my shows. We can only hope and pray. So, staying in God's hands might not be too much to say. In preparation for what might be coming tomorrow, the electricity hike, I have bought units for my prepaid meter. Preparing, hoping, praying, and waiting. That's what they used to say. Thank you very much, Kim.
Thank you so much, Sam. Ufuoma is saying it's happening tomorrow. Sam has bought and prepared himself. Is it only me in Abuja that is believing the federal government that says it has not been approved just yet?
You people are rich people. They are rich people. For me, my final word would be to the president. There are more Nigerians who did not vote for him than there are that voted for him. So in all the actions he takes, we should always remember that there are millions of Nigerians who still till today don't see him as their president, even though those opinions might not necessarily count in the scheme of things. But you should always remember that, unlike the former president, he is president of all Nigerians and not just for a section.
Thank you very much, Ufuoma. Kalada.
All right. I would like to say that the president first should focus on ensuring that we begin to generate revenue, local production. So let's focus on building our industries. For the industries that are dead, that are not working, let's look at resuscitating those industries, like the agricultural factory, for instance, like the refineries. Let's build solar farms. We have been increasing the tariff of electricity. Let's build solar farms where the state government can also key into some of these ideas and ensure. Let's focus on agriculture, for instance, so that we can boost our local production and not depend so much on importation, and then unification of foreign exchange starts to disturb us. And also, let's look at alternative energy, so that also the petrol price, while we're trying to work on our refineries, would not necessarily affect us. These are some of the things we can do in 3, 4 months, 5 months, if the government is willing, to work for
to go with it. And Louis, the new Electricity Act covers some of this to allow for state and use of renewable energy. Abayomi?
Yeah, well, for me, I think I am, happier now that I'm a Nigerian. Because before now, you discuss, politics with even matter others, and it will be like you are teaching a 3-year-old, girl photosynthesis. But now you see people, coming, showing interest. I think the time that will get better is fast approaching. So what I would advise is let's ask more questions. Let us, be more involved, and before we know it, we surely get there.
All right, get active Office of the Citizen. I know somebody was pointing out to former saying more people didn't vote for him. Yeah, I mean, I'm a 25% turnout for the election, and he got 8 million votes. So it means the critical mass of our population actually did not vote in the election for him. And if you saw all of the opposition ego, it outweighs what he got. So if you look at it from that perspective, that's what it means. I want to say thank you very much, gentlemen, for the Roundtable Day 3 and for everyone who participated, listening and sharing their thoughts. We couldn't read any of your messages or bring you in the conversation via telephone, but hopefully in the near future we'll incorporate that also. I want to say thank you very much to Ufuoma. Ufuoma is our news manager from Lagos. Thank you very, very much, Ufuoma. I appreciate you. I know you were tired under the weather, but your energy level was so high enough for you to become an oracle to tell us to tighten our belt and prepare for the worst. I see it now. Wow. But we hear you, sir. We have heard you. And Sam Oracle Chinedu, thank you very much. He has bought enough units. Whatever wants to happen, let it happen. He's ready. Kalada, thank you very much also for being a part of the Roundtable and our very own Abayomi. We appreciate you all.
Thank you.
And look forward to the next edition of the Roundtable, where we interrogate some critical issues in Nigeria and look at governance policies and how Nigerians are coping. I hope the next time we're around, things will be a lot better and would have a bit more positivity to the conversation also. It's a wrap for now. Until next time, my name is Kimberly Mwachiko. Back to regular programming.